Max was used to the dim, dusty silence of the university library. As an aspiring historian, he spent most of his nights poring over forgotten texts and obscure manuscripts, searching for fragments that could complete his dissertation on ancient trade routes. Tonight was no different, or so he thought. It was nearing midnight when Max ventured into a section of the library he had never explored before. Tucked behind tall, sagging shelves and blocked by a faded restricted access sign, this corner of the library seemed almost forgotten. Curiosity drew him forward. His footsteps echoed eerily on the polished wooden floor as he slipped past the barricade. The air was heavy and still, almost oppressive. A faint shimmer caught his eye from a pedestal in the corner. Resting atop, it was a single book, its cover cracked and leather-bound, with no title or markings. It seemed oddly out of place among the dusty academic volumes surrounding it. His breath quickened as he approached, unable to shake the feeling that the book was waiting for him. Max hesitated. The room seemed colder now, the air sharper. Shaking off his unease, he reached out and touched the book's surface. It felt warm, almost alive. As his fingers brushed the cover, a faint hum resonated in his chest, a pulse of energy that sent a shiver down his spine. He opened it. The first page bore no title, no introduction, only a single line of text written in a language he did not recognize, yet understood perfectly. Tomorrow, you will find what you have always sought. The words glowed faintly before fading into the parchment. Max stared, his mind racing. He turned the page, but it was blank. He flipped through the entire book, yet no other words appeared. Disappointment and confusion mingled with his unease. He considered closing the book and walking away, but the words lingered in his mind. What could they mean? He decided to take the book home. The following day, Max went about his routine as usual. A lecture in the morning, coffee with his friend Eric in the afternoon, and an endless session of research in the university archives. As he dug through stacks of old maps and documents, something remarkable happened. Wedged between two unrelated manuscripts, he found a map fragment thought lost for centuries, a piece critical to his dissertation. His hands trembled as he held the brittle parchment, the thrill of discovery surging through him. The prophecy had come true, but his excitement was short-lived. That evening, the university was abuzz with unsettling news. Professor Grayson, the head of Max's department, had vanished. He had been last seen in the archives shortly after Max left. Police were involved, and rumors swirled about foul play. Max's elation turned to unease. Could the book have caused this? Returning to his apartment, he opened the book again. The blank page from the night before now bore new words, faint and shimmering. Every gift requires a price. Max's pulse quickened. He slammed the book shut and paced his small apartment, replaying the day's events in his mind. The discovery of the map fragment, the professor's disappearance. It couldn't be a coincidence. The book was more than it seemed, and it was no longer just an academic curiosity. It was dangerous, yet a part of him, a desperate, ambitious part, wanted to keep going. What else could the book do? What could he achieve if he followed its guidance? His curiosity won out. He opened the book again and whispered to himself, just one more time. The book became Max's obsession. Over the next few days, he tested its powers cautiously, his curiosity battling with his fear. Each night, a new line would appear on its pages, cryptic yet strangely alluring. Every prediction played out the following day with unnerving accuracy, and every gain was matched by a loss. The second prophecy was simple. Tomorrow, a door will open where none existed before. Max couldn't make sense of it. He spent the day wandering the university, his thoughts clouded by the cryptic message. Late in the afternoon, while taking a shortcut through an alley near the campus, he saw it. Nestled between two old, decrepit buildings was a door, gleaming, polished, and completely out of place. Compelled by an invisible force, Max approached. His hand trembled as he pushed it open. Beyond lay a forgotten storage room filled with boxes of manuscripts, some dating back centuries. Among them, Max found a journal written by an early explorer, a first-hand account of voyages that predated even the most established records. It was a historian's dream, a discovery that could cement his career. Much was ecstatic. He spent hours poring over the journal, barely noticing the chill creeping into the room or the faint whispers that seemed to rise from the shadows. That evening, as Max left the alley, the air felt heavier. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. When he arrived home, his phone buzzed with a notification, an emergency alert from the university. A student had gone missing, Eric, his closest friend. Max froze. He hadn't seen Eric since their coffee break earlier that week. His stomach churned as he recalled the book's words, "Every gift requires a price." With trembling hands, he opened the book again. This time, the words glowed brighter. The balance must be maintained. Max didn't sleep that night. Guilt gnawed at him, but so did something else, a hunger for more. The journal he had found was groundbreaking, and the possibilities of the book seemed endless. Surely he could control it, he reasoned. If he was careful, maybe he could use it without causing more harm. The next night, the book greeted him with another prophecy. Tomorrow, you will wield influence beyond imagination. Despite his better judgment, Max couldn't resist. The next day, during a heated seminar, he cited details from the Explorer's Journal to challenge a senior professor's claims. The room fell silent as the professor stammered, unable to refute Max's evidence. By the end of the day, students and staff alike were hailing him as a prodigy. But the victory was hollow. That evening, as Max walked home, he found a stray cat on his doorstep, its body twisted unnaturally. Its lifeless eyes seemed to accuse him. He shuddered and hurried inside, but the image lingered. The next page of the book read, "Power comes with sacrifice." Max's hands shook as he slammed the book shut. He had thought he could control it, but the cost was escalating. His friend was missing, and now this. Yet the temptation gnawed at him. He had tasted success, real, undeniable success, and the book promised more. The following night, the book offered another line. "Tomorrow, you will see the truth." Max hesitated. His ambition urged him forward, but his conscience screamed for him to stop. He considered destroying the book, but something in the back of his mind whispered that it wouldn't let him. In the silence of his apartment, the book seemed to hum softly, as if it were alive, waiting for his decision. The next morning, Max woke with a sense of dread heavy in his chest. The book's prophecy haunted him. Tomorrow, you will see the truth. He avoided the library, the alley, and even his own reflection in windows, terrified of what truth might mean. Yet, the day unfolded uneventfully, and by nightfall he convinced himself it was nothing. That night, he couldn't resist opening the book again. As he turned the pages, they began to glow faintly. This time, instead of words, images appeared, blurry, shifting visions of his own life. He saw himself in the library, discovering the journal. He saw Eric, smiling at him during their last coffee break. Then, he saw something new. Eric, wandering down a dark corridor, calling for help. The vision shifted to a cold, windowless room. Eric was there, shackled, his face pale and eyes sunken. A shadowy figure loomed nearby, its features indistinct, like smoke in the air. Max slammed the book shut, his heart pounding. He realized with growing horror that Eric's disappearance was linked to the book. The more he used it, the more it took from the people around him. Max spent the next day digging through the university archives, searching for answers about the book's origins. Hidden among forgotten volumes, he found scattered references to something called the Chronicle of Echoes, a legendary artifact said to grant its user incredible power, at a cost. The fragmented accounts spoke of previous owners' kings who rose to glory only to fall into madness, scholars who unlocked the universe's secrets but vanished without a trace. One chilling passage described the book as a parasite, feeding on the ambition of its user until there was nothing left. Max felt the weight of the book in his bag like a leaden stone. That evening, he returned home to find his apartment colder than usual. The book sat on his desk, untouched, yet it seemed to hum with anticipation. Gathering his resolve, he opened it again. New words scrawled across the page. Tomorrow, you will choose. Choose what the words offered no clarity, only a sense of impending finality. The next day, Max resolved to stop using the book. He locked it in a desk drawer and threw himself into his work, avoiding anything that might tempt him back. But the book's influence was relentless. Whispers followed him in empty hallways. Shadows moved in his periphery. That night, he dreamed of Eric, calling to him from a place deep and dark, his voice distorted and filled with pain. When Max woke, the book was on his nightstand, its cover glowing faintly. The next page was different. Instead of a prophecy, it contained a message. Your hesitation weakens you. Act, or be acted upon. Max Visual correct. He opened the book fully, hoping to find answers, but what he saw was far worse. It showed him a vision of his own future, a room filled with shadows. A twisted figure hunched over the book, its features eerily familiar. It was him, or what he would become. Desperate, Max returned to the library, combing through the restricted archives for more information. In an old journal belonging to a long-dead librarian, he found a warning. The chronicle cannot be destroyed by ordinary means. Its master must sever the bond willingly, or be consumed entirely. The words filled him with dread. He realized that the book wasn't just predicting his future. It was shaping it, trapping him in a web of fate. The more he used it, the harder it would be to escape. Max felt the walls of his world closing in. The book's power had infiltrated every corner of his life, and the weight of its influence pressed heavily on him. The vision of his future, the hunched, shadowed figure, haunted his thoughts. He knew he had to act, but the path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. That night, the book presented him with its most chilling prophecy yet. Tomorrow, the truth will demand its price. The words glowed briefly, then faded, leaving the page blank. Max sat in silence, staring at the book, dreading what the next day would bring. The following morning, the atmosphere on campus was tense. Another person had disappeared, an adjunct professor who worked in the same department as Max. The whispers and rumors among staff and students grew louder. Max couldn't shake the feeling that the disappearances were tied to his actions, each one a consequence of his ambition and the book's dark power. Driven by desperation, Max returned to the restricted section of the library. This time, he wasn't searching for answers. He was looking for a way to sever his connection to the book. He pored over ancient texts and forgotten tomes, piecing together fragments of lore about cursed artifacts. Finally, in a brittle, handwritten manuscript, he found what he was looking for. The chronicle could be severed from its master, but only through an act of immense personal sacrifice. The text described a ritual requiring the one bound to the book to offer something of great value, a piece of their soul, their mind, or their life. The exact nature of the sacrifice was never clear, but the final line was explicit: the chronicle will not release its master willingly. That night, Max returned home and prepared for the ritual. The manuscript had outlined a crude process involving fire, salt, and blood. He gathered what he needed, lit candles around the book, and began the incantation. The air grew thick and oppressive as he spoke the ancient words, his voice trembling. At first, nothing happened. Then, the book began to tremble, its cover glowing faintly. A low, guttural hum filled the room, growing louder with each passing second. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting and writhing as if alive. Suddenly, the book snapped open, its pages flipping wildly. Max felt a sharp pain in his chest, as though something inside him was being torn away. The room spun, and his vision blurred. When he regained focus, the book was no longer on the desk. It hovered in the air before him, its pages glowing with an unearthly light. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the room. Do you think you can unbind what has already claimed you? Max's knees buckled under the weight of the voice. He managed to stammer, I don't want this anymore. I never wanted this. The voice chuckled, a sound that echoed like thunder. You wanted power. You wanted success. I gave you what you asked for, and now you wish to turn away, foolish child. The shadows in the room grew darker, coalescing into a figure. It resembled Max, but was distorted, twisted, a grotesque version of himself. The figure stepped closer, its hollow eyes fixed on him. You cannot sever the bond without offering something of equal worth. What will you sacrifice? Max, your mind, your soul, or perhaps... The figure grinned wickedly. Your life. Max's heart raced as he realized the gravity of his situation. The book wouldn't let him go easily, and the cost of freedom might be more than he could bear. But he couldn't continue living under its shadow. He had to make a choice. Summoning his courage, Max whispered, "Take my mind." The figure paused, its grin fading. For a moment, the room was silent. Then the voice replied, "So be it." The book flared with light, and Max screamed as pain exploded in his head. Memories flashed before his eyes, his childhood, his friends, his ambitions, all fading into darkness. When the light finally subsided, Max collapsed to the floor, the room spinning around him. When he woke, the book was gone. His mind felt empty. He could remember fragments of his life, but nothing coherent. His work, his dreams, even his name felt distant, like shadows he couldn't quite grasp. He stumbled to his feet, disoriented and weak. The sacrifice had been made, but the cost was greater than he had imagined. Max's apartment was eerily silent when he awoke, sprawled on the cold floor. His head throbbed, and his vision blurred as he tried to piece together where he was. The candles from the ritual had burned out, leaving waxy residue on the desk. The book was gone, but so was something else, something deep inside him. As he staggered to his feet, Max's reflection caught his eye. He moved toward the mirror cautiously, staring at the hollow man that looked back at him. His once bright eyes were dull, as if drained of vitality. He tried to focus, but his memories came to him like faint whispers slipping through his grasp. He remembered his name, fragments of his work, but nothing felt real. He was a stranger to himself. Over the next few days, Max wandered the campus in a daze. Familiar faces greeted him, but he struggled to recall their names or the context of their relationships. He avoided the library entirely, fearing what he might encounter there. The world felt distant, fragmented, like a dream teetering on the edge of a nightmare. His work, the thing that had once defined him, became incomprehensible. Notes he had written seemed foreign. Words on the pages of his dissertation blurred together, meaningless and abstract. The ambition that had driven him to the book in the first place was gone, leaving behind a hollow shell of who he had been. One evening, as he sat alone in his dim apartment, Max heard a faint knock at his door. He hesitated, dread settling in his stomach. Another knock, louder this time. Gathering what little courage he had, Max opened the door. There was no one there. Instead, a small, tattered package rested on the doorstep. It bore no address, no markings. Inside was a single sheet of paper, aged and yellowed. Scrawled in shaky handwriting were the words, "You are free, but the book never is. It waits for its next master." The paper slipped from his trembling fingers. The weight of the message sank in. The book had not been destroyed. It couldn't be. It was out there, waiting for someone else to fall into its trap. The thought sent a chill down his spine. As the weeks passed, Max's condition worsened. His mind felt like a labyrinth with no exits, his thoughts fractured and incomplete. He stopped attending lectures, unable to face the whispers and pitying glances of his colleagues. He spent most of his time in his apartment, staring blankly at the walls, his mind a void. One day, he received a letter from the university, informing him that his dissertation had been rejected due to lack of clarity and coherence. His academic career was over. The book had taken not just his memories, but his identity, his purpose. In the silence of his apartment, Max began to hear whispers again. Faint, indistinct, but unmistakable. At first, he thought it was his mind playing tricks on him. But as the days went on, the whispers grew louder. They spoke his name, called to him from the shadows. He knew the book was gone, but its presence lingered, like a phantom he couldn't escape. One night, Max woke to find the whispers louder than ever. He turned on every light in the apartment, but the shadows seemed to close in, suffocating him. As he stumbled to the mirror, he saw something that made his blood run cold. In his reflection, the book was there, hovering just behind him, its pages flipping silently. He spun around, but the room was empty. The whispers spoke again, a chorus of voices echoing in his mind. You can never escape what you sought. Max's descent into madness was slow but inevitable. The book no longer needed to be present to exert its influence. It had left its mark on him, an indelible scar that would haunt him for the rest of his days. He realized too late that the price of freedom wasn't just his memories. It was his very soul. As the days blurred together, Max became a ghost of himself, a cautionary tale for those who sought too much. The Chronicle of Echoes had moved on, its hunger now aimed at its next victim. Max no longer measured time in days. His existence had become a fog of whispers, fleeting images, and the oppressive weight of the book's lingering presence. The world outside his apartment faded into irrelevance. Food lost its taste, sunlight its warmth. His life had been reduced to a relentless cycle of confusion, fear, and the faint hope that his sacrifice might have been worth it. But the whispers never ceased. Late one night, Max heard them grow louder, their tones urgent and insistent. At first, he thought it was another hallucination, the product of his fractured mind. But then he noticed something new, a faint glimmer coming from the corner of his room. His heart sank. He knew what it was before he even turned to look. The book was back. It sat on his desk, its cracked leather cover glowing faintly in the dim light. Its presence filled the room with an almost tangible weight. Max felt the air grow cold, his breath visible in the dim glow of the book. The whispers coalesced into a single voice, deep and resonant, vibrating in his bones. You cannot escape your fate. Max stared at the book, his fear giving way to fury. I gave you what you wanted, he shouted, his voice raw. I gave you my mind. What more do you want from me? The voice chuckled, low and menacing. The Chronicle has no end, no master, no escape. It has chosen you, Max, and it will choose again. The word struck him like a blow. He realized, with horrifying clarity, that his sacrifice had meant nothing. The book wasn't satisfied with his mind. It wanted his entire being. But worse, it would continue its cycle, feeding on the ambition of others, drawing them into its web of promises and destruction. Max knew he couldn't let it happen. Summoning what little resolve he had left, he approached the book. His hand trembled as he reached out, his fingers brushing its warm surface. A surge of energy coursed through him, sending him stumbling backward. The room spun as the book flipped open, its pages glowing brightly. This time, it showed him something different. Instead of visions of the past or future, it revealed faces, dozens, maybe hundreds. Each face was marked with pain, regret, and fear. He realized these were the book's previous owners, all of them trapped within its pages, their souls bound to its endless cycle. And then he saw his own face, staring back at him. The realization struck him like lightning. The book wasn't just a tool of fate. It was a prison, holding the essence of those it had claimed. He understood now that the only way to break the cycle was to destroy the book, truly and completely. But the manuscript he had read in the library was clear such destruction would come at an unimaginable cost. Max hesitated. His life was already a shadow of what it once was. He had nothing left to lose, but he feared what might lie beyond. The voice interrupted his thoughts. Do you dare defy me? He closed his eyes, his resolve hardening. I won't let you take anyone else. Max grabbed the book and carried it to the kitchen. He poured lighter fluid over its pages, ignoring the heat radiating from its surface. As he struck a match, the voice screamed, a sound that pierced his ears and rattled his bones. The fire caught quickly, the flames climbing higher than they should have, turning the air thick with acrid smoke. The room darkened as shadows swirled around him, the voices rising in a deafening cacophony. He felt something clawing at his chest, pulling at his very essence. The faces he had seen in the book appeared before him, their expressions shifting from pain to relief. They began to fade, one by one, as the flames consumed the book. But the shadows didn't relent. They closed in around Max, their cold tendrils wrapping tightly around him. He felt himself slipping, his body growing weaker, his mind unraveling further. As the fire reached its peak, The shadows whispered one final message. The cycle is never truly broken. When the flames died out, the book was gone, reduced to ash. Max lay on the floor, his breathing shallow. The apartment was silent, the oppressive weight lifted. For the first time in weeks, he felt free, but he knew it wasn't over. Somewhere, in another forgotten corner of the world, a new book began to take form. Its pages filled with the whispers of those it had claimed, waiting for its next master. The chronicle of echoes lived on, its hunger unending. Max's body was found weeks later, lifeless in his apartment. No one knew what had happened to him, and no one would ever know the truth. He had succeeded in destroying one manifestation of the book, but its essence remained, an eternal parasite waiting to feed. The cycle continued. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and I'd love to hear your comments.